What if I told you that the moment your life started falling apart was the exact moment God decided you were ready for something extraordinary? Not punishing you, not abandoning you, testing you. And there's a massive difference between those two things that most people never figure out. And that gap right there, that's the reason some people come out of the fire forged like steel and others just get burned. If this is the kind of story that makes you think differently about your life, do me a favor right now. Hit that subscribe button and tap the bell icon, because every single week we drop content exactly like this. Stories that crack open the way you see the world. Stories that feel like someone finally put words to the thing you've been feeling but couldn't explain. We're building something real here, and I want you to be part of it. Now, let's get into this. You've been there. I know you have. That season of your life where everything, and I mean everything, seemed to be going wrong at the same time. The job fell through, the relationship cracked, the money dried up, the people you counted on disappeared, and you're lying there in the dark at 2 in the morning, staring at the ceiling, asking the one question that cuts deeper than any other question a human being can ask. Why? Why is this happening to me? Why now? Why this? And the silence that comes back feels like an answer in itself. It feels like nobody's listening, like maybe you've been doing this whole faith thing alone this whole time. But what if that silence wasn't absence? What if it was preparation? See, there's a story most people know, but very few people actually understand. It's the story of a man named Joseph. And before you check out because you think you've heard it, I want you to stay with me, because the version of this story that changed my entire perspective on suffering isn't the Sunday school version. It's the raw, unfiltered, what actually happened version. And by the time we get to the end of this, you're going to see your own life differently. I promise you that. Joseph was the 11th of 12 sons, born to a man named Jacob who, and this is important, loved him more openly than the others. His father gave him a coat of many colors. Sounds harmless, right? Sounds like a nice gesture. But in that culture, in that time, that coat was a symbol. It said, you are chosen, you are different, you matter more. And his brothers saw it every single day. They felt the sting of it every single morning. The favoritism wasn't just felt, it was worn, literally. And resentment doesn't go away just because you ignore it. It builds, quietly, dangerously, until one day it explodes. But here's what made things even more complicated. Joseph started having dreams, and not regular dreams, prophetic ones. Dreams where the sun and the moon and 11 stars bowed down to him. Dreams where his brothers' bundles of wheat bowed to his. And instead of keeping those dreams to himself, he told his brothers, he told his father. Now I want you to think about that for a second. Was he being arrogant? Was he being naive? Or was he simply a young man so full of what he believed was divine destiny that he didn't yet understand the cost of walking in purpose? Because here's the thing about purpose. It doesn't come with a manual. It doesn't come with a warning label that says sharing this will cost you everything. It just burns inside of you. And Joseph let it burn out loud. His brothers hated him for it. The scripture says they couldn't speak a kind word to him. They despised him. And one day, out in the fields, far from home, far from their father, the resentment finally boiled over into something none of them would ever be able to take back. They threw him in a pit. Let that land for a second. Not a metaphorical pit, a real one, dark, dry. He's screaming, he's reaching up, and his brothers are sitting nearby, eating food, completely unmoved by the sound of him crying. That image right there, that is one of the most chilling things in all of ancient literature. The people who were supposed to protect you, eating lunch while you beg for your life. And then it gets worse, because they didn't leave him there. They sold him to slave traders heading to Egypt. 20 pieces of silver, that's what his future was worth to them. That's what their brother was worth. And they took his coat, that beautiful coat, and they soaked it in goat's blood and brought it home to their father. Let Jacob believe his son was dead. Let a grieving old man carry that wound for years. Joseph didn't just lose his freedom that day. He lost his identity, his family, his name, everything he thought his life was supposed to be. And you have to ask yourself, where was God in that pit? Where was the divine protection for the man who was supposed to have divine destiny? If God loved Joseph, why didn't he stop this? Why let the betrayal happen? Why let the sale happen? Why allow the coat to be soaked in blood and a father's heart to be shattered? These are not small questions. These are the questions that have broken people's faith across centuries. And I'm not going to brush past them, because the answer, the real answer, changes everything. The answer is this: God wasn't absent in the pit. He was in it. Joseph arrives in Egypt as a slave. He's bought by a man named Potiphar, captain of Pharaoh's guard, one of the most powerful men in the country. And slowly, in this foreign land, in this impossible situation, Joseph starts to rise, not because luck found him, but because the gift inside him couldn't be contained by his circumstances. The text says that the Lord was with Joseph, that everything Joseph touched prospered. Potiphar noticed it. He gave Joseph more responsibility, then more, until Joseph was running the entire household, a slave running the household of one of Egypt's most powerful men. That is not a small thing. That is God threading purpose through a nightmare. But then, just when things are finally looking up, it hits again. Potiphar's wife wanted Joseph, and when Joseph refused, because the man had integrity even when no one was watching, even when the world had given him nothing but betrayal, she lied. She screamed assault. She held his cloak in her hand and told her husband that Joseph attacked her. And Potiphar, the man Joseph served faithfully, the man whose household Joseph had grown from nothing, threw him in prison. No trial, no defense, just chains. Twice now, thrown into a pit by the people closest to him, first his family, now his employer, first the brothers who should have loved him, now the master who should have known him better. And here's the mini-climax I need you to sit with for just a moment, because in prison, in the darkest, most hopeless version of Joseph's life, something is about to happen, something small, something that looks completely insignificant, something that will seem like a dead end before it becomes a doorway. And the timing of it, the specific sequence of events that unfolds from this point forward, is so precise, so impossibly coordinated, that by the time we get through it together, you will not be able to tell me that your lowest moments don't serve a purpose. Stay with me. In prison, Joseph meets two men, Pharaoh's former cupbearer and his former baker. Both had fallen out of favor, both were locked up, and both of them have dreams on the same night that disturb them deeply. Joseph notices their faces, and this detail, this tiny detail, matters more than it seems, because a lesser man, a man consumed by his own suffering, wouldn't have looked up long enough to notice someone else's expression. But Joseph looked up. Joseph asked them what was wrong, and when they told him they'd had dreams they couldn't interpret, Joseph said something remarkable. He said, "Interpretations belong to God. Tell me your dreams." He interpreted them accurately. The cupbearer would be restored to his position in 3 days. The baker would be executed. Both came true, exactly as Joseph said. And before the cupbearer left that prison, Joseph made one small request. "Remember me when you're restored. Mention me to Pharaoh. Get me out of here." The cupbearer walked out of that prison, got his job back, and forgot Joseph completely. 2 full years passed. 2 years of silence, 2 years of waiting in a cell for a door that never opened, 2 years of wondering if he'd misread everything, 2 years of asking whether God actually remembered him at all. And this, right here, is where I need you to lean in, because this is the part of the story nobody talks about enough. Not the dreams, not the coat, not the rise to power that's coming. This, the 2 years of silence after you did everything right and nothing happened. Because that kind of silence, that specific kind of waiting, is not punishment. It is positioning. God was not making Joseph wait because he forgot him. God was making Joseph wait because Pharaoh wasn't ready yet, because the famine that would threaten millions of lives hadn't reached its critical moment yet, because the brothers who needed to be confronted weren't in the right place yet, because the entire plan, the enormous, multi-decade civilization-saving plan, required the exact right moment, and Joseph was in that cell being prepared for a wait he didn't even know was coming. Then, one night, 2 years after the cupbearer walked free, Pharaoh has a dream. 2 dreams, actually. 7 fat cows devoured by 7 thin ones, 7 healthy stalks of grain swallowed by 7 withered ones, and not one person in all of Egypt's vast wisdom, not one of the magicians or the scholars or the dream interpreters in the most powerful empire in the earth can tell Pharaoh what it means. That's when the cupbearer finally remembers. That's when he tells Pharaoh, "There's a Hebrew man in your prison. He interpreted my dream, and he was right, to the letter." Pharaoh sends for Joseph, and here's what gets me every time I sit with this story. Joseph doesn't just clean up a little bit for this moment. He shaves, he changes his clothes, he prepares himself for the most important meeting of his life while still technically a prisoner. He hasn't been released yet. He hasn't been promised anything yet.